What is up? It's the Vic Gear Hunter, and today we're going to do the fourth and final in a four-part series of how I lost fat and put on muscle and bone density over like a 2-month, 4-month period of time, really concentrated in 4 months. So in the last, week, basically, I released a review of the DEXA scan, so the most accurate way to scan your body composition changes with fat loss as well as muscle gain and bone density changes. I did a review for the Zozo Fit suit, which was a great and helpful sort of monthly tracker for physiological sort of composition changes just from an exterior standpoint. And now I'm going to do a review for the nutritional changes that I made to cut about 8.5 pounds of fat and put on 2.1 pounds of muscle as well as some bone density over a 4-month period of time, really concentrated in a 2-month period of time. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. If you're new to the channel, I try to test and track devices for CrossFit or high intensity interval training, but really looking at both the wellness and the recovery, as well as the training tracking and training intensity. I try to make sure to not just share a feature, but actually give it comparable, objective comparison to other features like it on the market if a device has a particular feature. And then 3, it's all sort of no frills type of reviews, no fancy stuff, just really work hard on the content to be provided. All right, so in this video, what I'm going to talk about is how I lost fat poundage and put on muscle mass and density. It obviously comes down to the most basic things: exercise and diet. And I am just going to sort of share just sort of the tenets of what I did from a diet standpoint, because I felt like it was effective, obviously not just to lose fat, but to put on muscle and increase bone density across that period of time. I feel like is an effective approach, as even the DEXA scan sort of specialist said, that it really is sort of the combination of both things you'd want to accomplish. So I thought, I would just sort of share it on the channel just as a sort of an idea of what I did. So first, we're going to talk about diet. Obviously, diet is one of the most fundamental aspects. I did it in 2 simple ways: tracking protein intake and tracking calories, with some specialty things sort of tied in there. So with protein intake, I just sort of said, 175 pounds was sort of my goal weight. I just wanted to make sure I took in 175 grams of protein. So I tracked it specifically. Everything had to go in there, and that was the overall target goal. When it came to calories, I only wanted myself to have like a 300, maybe 500 calorie deficit on a daily basis. And in some days, I wanted to push it a little bit over. So for me, it was somewhat about tracking a net overall deficit over a number of days. And it was actually also about variance, so that you don't keep a steady state calorie deficit. We'll talk about that in a little bit specifics. So when you look at calorie deficits, you're tracking your calories. What happens at the human body if you actually run a 500 calorie deficit or a 400 calorie deficit, you do that every day, your body will eventually just lower its metabolism. It's been proven in multiple studies, at least on YouTube videos that I've watched, and that's where my expertise. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, so don't take this as doctor and dietitian specific recommendations. I'm just telling you what I did. But I always wanted to have variance. So if I had a 500 calorie deficit day, I wanted to have almost maybe an equal or plus 100 calorie day the next day, so that my body was never keeping up with what I was doing. The other thing that happened when I was tracking protein intake, to make sure I always made sure protein was the primary and only macro that I wanted to hit every day, because I wanted to keep my muscle mass, it actually made me start evaluating what I ate, so that calories were, like money to be spent. And I only wanted to spend them in effective ways so that I could hit the protein goal to keep the muscle while also losing the fat and having a calorie deficit. So what ended up happening indirectly is I stopped eating sugar. And I really, I didn't think about it, but like I used to put sugar and cream and sugar in my coffee. And I was like, well, that's, 100 calories. I don't need that. And I just stopped eating sugary things because it was just wasted calories. It wasn't like a conscious choice, like I need to stop eating sugar. It was more of just like, how do I want to spend my money? And I think that was the primary mindset that really helped me. It wasn't like, I've got to do this, I've got to cut this out. It wasn't like that, which is sometimes hard to do because your body wants to go against the grain. So I stopped eating sugar as an indirect benefit, as well as I stopped eating carbs, like unnecessary carbs. Like I would have, and we'll talk about that in a second, I would have like rice at times, I'd have bread at times. I wouldn't avoid things. It's just when I was going about a normal day, I was just eating protein centered things or just vegetable centered things, not really tracking paleo, but just avoiding carbs because it was just unnecessary. Like if I was going to eat eggs or turkey or something like that, I'd be like, do I really want a piece of bread or two pieces of bread to make it a sandwich or not? Because that's just unnecessary, non-protein related calories. And the other thing that I really did is on the severe deficit days, I really made sure to eat a variety of just unhealthy things if that's what I was in the mood for. And that leads into a big part of the diet. So the premise was protein intake and calorie deficit every day. But the other big part of the diet was periodic intermittent fasting. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've done this for like 3 years, but I just made sure it was a little more rigorous. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so that you have variance. You're not doing the same thing every day. I would have an 18 to 20 hour fast, and I would only have like, salt water or green tea with nothing in it, or black coffee with nothing in it, or peppermint tea. That actually helped a ton, just to drink peppermint tea throughout the day. Just nothing and some elements. So, nothing that had any calories for 18 to 20 hours. That was a little bit longer. So you hit it really hard, but you don't do it every day, and your body never catches up. It never figures it out. And so on those fasting days, it really helped, and that's, the tidbits of if you're going to do intermittent fasting is you got to start slow. You got to make sure I feel like if you get past, you're getting close to the 12-hour point. My recommendation for anybody doing it is to drink a ton of water in like 11 hours, because your body starts transitioning to ketosis at 12 hours and you start feeling the hunger. So just drink a ton of water and it really cuts the hunger pangs down. Or drink some peppermint tea, that helps. And then the other sort of physiological thing is why 18 to 20 is because when you cross 16 hours, that's when autophagy and you sort of chewing up bad and dead cells, autophagy speeds up. And so you have an extra physiological benefit past 16 hours. So that's what I would incorporate alongside. In those days, it was easy to get a calorie deficit. So what was the benefit of fasting? The benefit of fasting was eating a little bit more whatever I wanted on the fasting nights. So if I finished my fast after a workout, and I would always work out within the fasting window, if I finished my fast at like 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, which was typical, I would have like from 6 to like 10:30-ish to eat, and I would not be allowed more than a 500 calorie deficit, and I need to get my protein goals. And so I would obviously drink, protein shakes. That was something I incorporated in, but I would also like have like a calzone. Or there was a multiple times I get like a regular sort of like 9-inch Jersey Mike's, chicken Philly sub. And sometimes I get double meat, and it'd have provolone on there. It'd have a light amount of mayonnaise on there. And obviously it'd have white bread. So all the worst stuff. Again, I never wanted my body to know, and it worked. I mean, this is what I did, and I did it every week. Sometimes I'd have tacos or, enchiladas, whatever I wanted in some ways. And it wasn't like excessive. It was like, I had a certain calorie window, and as long as I was drinking protein shakes or maybe having cottage cheese, I would get to my protein goal, but it was hard to get to the calorie goal of a 500 deficit being the max I was allowed to have. So it gave me that complete flexibility to have multiple things. And on the weekends, I would try to not be super uptight, but just try to stay kind of at the calorie goal. But on the weekly tracking, I use MyFitnessPal to make sure I had a net weekly negative. And so those were the things that I did. So protein, calorie deficit, total fluctuation. So severe calorie deficit day equaled maybe a positive calorie overflow the next day. Intermittent fasting, really stringent, but only 3 days a week. And that gave me the flexibility to eat kind of flexible, whatever I want, unhealthy. So my body was constantly in flux. And then the last thing I did within the diet was just water intake, just making sure I had a lot of water intake. It helps on the fasting days, obviously, but making sure I'm hitting like a gallon of water a day. I have a water bottle, I'll hydrate. I'll put a review for that in the description below, but it helped me to track to make sure I was getting a gallon of water every day. So those are the things that I did for the diet to help lose fat and maintain and even somehow gain muscle and bone density. And you can refer to the DEXA scan video. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to watch see the physiological changes that I literally underwent over the last couple of months, mostly in the last 2 months. And then when it came to exercise, I did, this channel is focused on CrossFit high intensity interval training. So I just did CrossFit 4 or 5 days a week, and it most often was 5. So, as somebody that's over the age of 40, joints hurt more often. So you have to kind of have rest days. So I would just, in the CrossFit, I would really try to make the most of each piece of the workout for the class. So the workout in CrossFit, if you're new to CrossFit, is basically two functions besides the warm-up. It's heavy lifting, so strength development, muscle development, and then cardiovascular work. And the cardiovascular work is great because it's higher intensity, but it's also great because it's varying. It has constant variance. So some days, varying time domain. So some days you're doing 20 minutes of rigorous work. Some days you're doing 30 minutes of rigorous straight work. And then a lot of times you're doing rigorous straight work with a pause, like a rest. You'd have 3 minutes of intensity, 1 minute of rest, 3 minutes, and you do that over and over again. Or you have 5 minutes of intensity, 2 minutes of rest, and over again. So you always had this fluctuance to the intensity of the workout for that portion, but there's always the heavy lifting. So you're growing muscle mass, and as long as you're taking a protein, you have the chance to grow your muscle mass. And then the second thing I did with exercise, and this is something I'm going to be really honest about, is that if you're just doing CrossFit alone, I don't think CrossFit is a great method for weight loss, because if you look at the physiology, it's fine for calorie burning. You would burn on average, even at the highest of intensity, like 550 to 650 in calories per 1 hour class, because I track it on like 6 different devices, and that is what I get on a regular basis. But I don't think it's exactly the right type of work to optimize your body for fat loss. So I don't think, unless you're focused on calorie deficit, I don't think you're going to see fat loss just from hitting a CrossFit class every day. Although it feels like your body is being beaten to a pulp. So you're getting muscle, you're getting fitness elevation. Absolutely. You're getting muscle development. Absolutely. You're getting stronger in muscles you didn't know you had. Absolutely. But fat loss, weight loss, no. Because in the anaerobic state, where the CrossFit is crossing into like zone 4, zone 5, your peak aerobic zones, and in the lifting zones, you're not even crossing into anything. You're not in that fat burning zone of heart rate, where your body is like using fat as an energy source. So what I did is typically 2 days, if not 3 days, I would add just a cardio, like a 45-minute steady state cardio. And all these YouTube videos are about zone 2 cardio. And that's what I would do. And I would track zone 2 based on like a calculation method. So if my max heart rate is 180 and my age is this, then my zone 2 was estimated at 130. So I would sort of focus on 130. If I'm looking at my zone 2 based on a max heart rate and then 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% to get to zone 2, it's like 108 to 126. And I felt like that was too low. But there's you can watch a lot of videos on zone 2 and what it is. But I would just do 45 minutes. If I could do 3 days a week, that would be ideal. But 2 days a week of 30 to 45 minutes and sometimes 60 minutes. So longer in that zone 2, your body is actually having to tap into fat as a fuel source for that particular workout. So it's just optimizing not just calorie burn, but using some of your storage as a burning mechanism for the exact workout itself, which CrossFit does not do. It does not really tap into your fat as a fuel source, because it's mostly relying on oxygen and the will to survive with CrossFit. So I would do CrossFit 5 days a week basically, and do zone 2 cardio basically 2 days a week. I would let's just say 2 hours, like 2 60-minute sessions, 3 45-minute sessions, whatever, in the exercise portion. So that's what I did. That's what I did for diet. That's what I did for exercise. And I feel like I'm still seeing the results. Like, I don't feel like I'm suffering. I don't feel like I'm denying myself. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing, because psychologically for me, the intermittent fast is just a time where I'm just not putting food in my mouth. And then after that, I get to put a little bit tastier food in my mouth. And that makes all the days a little bit easier. So I don't feel like it was like a conscious diet sacrifice. It was just more mindful of exactly what I was doing, where I ended up, I'm not going to eat sugar because that's just a waste of calories. And I just was more mindful of things that, am I getting enough protein? Let me make sure I eat the right protein foods. A lot of cottage cheese, a lot of Oikos Greek yogurt, the 20-gram protein one, like the highest one they have. So what are my goals from here? And I'll just sort of share this as an FYI. My goal, so I started at basically 190, 188, 190 in weight. And now I'm at 178. So that's 12 pounds. It didn't really track exactly in the DEXA scan, but basically 12 pounds is what I see it. And my goal is to get to 175. I think 175, I'll probably be at 12% body fat, and that's super ideal for me. And then I'm going to change to try to be in a strength building phase. So I've cycled out creatine, so I'm going to add creatine back in. I might follow the Huberman Lab recommendation for some vitamins from Momentous, which actually helps, as a male, helps your testosterone produce at a little bit better rate. So I might do that. So creatine and maybe some momentous vitamins to help the testosterone production be a little bit more smooth. And then add into it a calorie increase, like maybe plus 300 on the calories per day, and a focus on lifting. So instead of maybe those zone 2 cardio sessions, I might actually switch those out for 45 minutes or like basically 2 hours a week of extra lifting. Focused on hypertrophy or focused on strength, basically my goal would be to hit 175 and then go in somewhat of a maintenance on the fat amount in my body if it's possible, and then build 10 pounds of muscle to go back to 185, but do it in a pure muscle fashion. I don't know if it's possible, but that's my goal, to definitely lose the fat, to get more, kind of cut, or just feel like really like I'm in like a lean state while maintaining my muscle, and then grow my muscle from there using those categories, using that specific approach, mirroring a lot of what I'm doing. Maybe actually going to 225 grams of protein a day. So massive, step up in protein. So those are my goals. That's what I did for nutrition. There's just links in the description below. You can follow different parts of all of this, but that's what I did to lose fat and gain muscle and bone density over the last couple of months, primarily the last couple of months and over the last 4 months. The Fit Gear Hunter, thanks so much for watching.